Have you ever followed a rule without knowing why? A rule that seemed pointless at first but carried an unspoken weight, a silent warning that made the back of your neck prickle? Some rules are there to protect you. Others exist to protect something else from getting out. I learned that the hard way. My time as a park ranger wasn't what I expected. It wasn't about guiding lost hikers, protecting wildlife, or enjoying peaceful nights under the stars. It was about survival, about obeying rules that felt less like guidelines and more like whispered prayers. At Black Hollow National Park, the rules weren't there to keep us safe. They were there to keep something else in. I never planned to end up at Black Hollow. It wasn't on my list of places to apply. I hadn't even heard of it before. But after months of job hunting, after sending out resume after resume and receiving nothing but polite rejections or silence, my phone rang. "We reviewed your application," a man's voice said, flat and to the point. "We'd like you to start immediately. No interview. No questions. No follow-ups. Just a job offer, dropped into my lap like I had been chosen for something without knowing why. It didn't sit right, but I couldn't afford to be picky. My savings were drying up and rent was due. So I packed my bags, filled up my car, and drove into the mountains toward a place that seemed to exist outside of time. The deeper I went, the more the world seemed to shift. The roads narrowed. The trees grew taller, denser, pressing in from both sides as if they were watching. By the time I reached the ranger station, I felt like I had crossed some invisible threshold. Like I had left behind the world I knew. The station itself was small, an old wooden building nestled between towering pines. It looked like it had been standing there for decades, untouched by modern hands. My new supervisor, Ranger Dalton, was waiting for me outside. Dalton was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s, with a weathered face and eyes that had seen too much. He didn't waste time with small talk. A firm handshake, a gruff nod, and he led me inside. The first part of our meeting was exactly what I expected. Rules about campers, wildlife safety, emergency protocols. I listened, nodded, and took notes. Then, just as I thought we were done, he pulled out a single folded piece of paper and slid it across the desk. "These are the park's special rules," he said, his voice low. I hesitated before unfolding it. The paper felt worn, creased from being handled too many times. The list inside wasn't long, but every rule sent a chill down my spine. Do not enter the forest between 2:13 a.m. and 3:33 a.m. If you are inside during this time, leave immediately. If you see a woman in white standing at the tree line, do not approach. Do not speak to her. Do not let her see you blink. Ignore any voices calling your name from the trees. No one should be out there after dark. If you hear whistling between midnight and dawn, go inside. Lock the doors. Wait until it stops. If a man in a park ranger uniform asks you for help past sunset, do not follow him. He is not one of us. Do not look directly at the fire watchtower after midnight. If you see lights on, close your eyes and count to 10 before looking away. If you find a deer standing completely still, staring at you, do not break eye contact. Back away slowly. Do not turn your back on it. Their reach ends with the sunrise. I looked up, expecting a smirk, some indication that this was just an elaborate joke for the new guy. But Dalton's face was unreadable, his expression carved from stone. "This is some kind of initiation, right?" I asked, forcing a laugh. "Trying to scare the rookie?" He didn't blink. "Follow them, or you won't last long here." Something in his tone, low, unwavering, dead serious, sent a cold shiver down my spine. I wanted to push back, to ask what he meant, but the weight of his gaze made me swallow my words. I told myself it was just a weird tradition, some local superstition meant to freak out newcomers. But still I followed the rules, just in case. For the first few nights, nothing happened. The air was still, the forest eerily quiet, and I started to believe maybe it was all nonsense. Maybe Dalton and the others were just messing with me. Then everything changed. It was my 5th night on the job. I was in the ranger station finishing up paperwork when I heard it. A whistle. Low and slow, a tuneless melody drifting through the open window. My entire body went rigid. My brain scrambled for an explanation. Wind through the trees, maybe a bird, but deep down I knew. Rule number 4. If you hear whistling between midnight and dawn, go inside. Lock the doors. Wait until it stops. Heart pounding, I reached for the window and slammed it shut. My hands trembled as I locked the door and turned off the lights. The whistling didn't stop. It circled the station, moving closer, then farther away, weaving through the trees like something searching, like something calling. I held my breath. Seconds stretched into minutes. My ears strained in the darkness, every muscle in my body locked in place. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. I didn't sleep after that. And I knew without a doubt that Black Hollow's rules weren't just superstition. They were warnings. And something out there was waiting for me to break them. 2 nights later, my shift was almost over when I found myself near the eastern tree line. The air was thick with silence, the kind that made every footstep sound too loud. Every breath felt like it disturbed something unseen. My flashlight cut through the dark, sweeping over the towering pines and the dense undergrowth. Then I saw it. Something pale, barely visible between the trees. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, maybe the moon reflecting off a patch of fog or the smooth bark of a birch tree. But as I stepped closer, I realized it wasn't a trick. A woman stood there. She wore a long white dress, the fabric draping loosely around her body, unmoving despite the faint breeze whispering through the branches. Her posture was unnaturally stiff, rigid, as if she had been standing there for hours, watching me. A slow, crawling dread slithered up my spine. I raised my flashlight, my fingers tightening around it. The beam cut through the dark and landed on her face. My stomach plummeted.